Anti-Afro Svengalis, and I want to make light of this murder case that went down, boy, several years ago. But the trial, or one of the trials, completed several months ago, and I'm focusing specifically on Billy Wagner and Angela Wagner, who are married. You're going to hear in a second from the brother-in-law of Billy Wagner and the half-brother of Angela. He's addressing a situation with Billy Wagner that got physical because they were just talking about his relationship with Billy Wagner. And this is going to help me set up this video. I'll come back and explain more after you hear this miniature description of this altercation. Stay tuned and I will return.
Did you ever get into an altercation with Billy?
I wouldn't call it an altercation,
What
per
would you call
se.
it?
He kept calling me, he kept calling me gay. And I can take a joke, you know what I mean? Hell, my friends joke with me all the time. This went on for about a week. And I told him, I said, Billy, you call me gay. Which ain't what he said. He called me another word. But I said, you call me gay one more time. I said, I'm going to roll your big hind end right down here on the ground. And he came over to me, which I'm only about eye level with his nipple anyway, because he's a big old brute. Mm-hmm. He came over to me, put his arm on, he leaned down there and he got my ear. He said, you're gay. I reached up, I grabbed him, I flip-flopped him back on the ground. I put him in a chokehold because that's about the only thing I could do with that big old brute. And my sister started screaming at me, telling me to let him go because he's turning blue.
That was Angel.
Yeah.
And that was that at Bethel Hill?
Yep.
And that's the kind of guy Billy was, right?
Yep. Just a needler, I guess you could call it.
Right.
I mean, after a while, hearing the same thing, you kind of get
tired of it.
Yeah. At least come up with some new material.
You get where I'm going with this, people? I don't know any culture, any group of people who will just let you do whatever you want to them, or say whatever you want to. And for some reason, some of our folks seem to think you can say and do what the hell you want just because it's another black person. We see how they handled it. I mean, I wasn't there. I'll venture to say that Billy Wagner, the brute, was probably pissed off at his brother-in-law and decided to use this rather strange, maladaptive way of expressing that. I mean, have a clue. They ended up killing 8 people and another family because of a freaking custody case involving Jake Wagner. Now, the other son, Billy Wagner IV, this was his trial. He was convicted. Mother, Angela Wagner, pled guilty to lesser charges. And the big brute, he's going to go to trial. But I wanted to point out, what in the heck do you think would happen just among your family and friends if this behavior about calling someone an FAG, just coming up and just saying that, is that acceptable behavior in your family, among your friends? Is that how relatives treat each other? Is this what people are expecting here on YouTube, that you just grin and bear it? I'm going to let you in on a big secret. These behaviors that you see don't have anything to do with you. When you're talking about those who you do not know, when I say do not know, I'm going to be specific about do not know within the YouTube context. You've never had a conversation with them, or say you've had a brief conversation with them and you had no conflicts. But then they come up with all of this anger, rage, hostility, frustration. They feel that you've placed them in a position to be humiliated because you won't react. You would not give them a fight when there is no fight. These behaviors have nothing to do with you. If you can get that through and write on that, what these subjects have to say to you and about you is not going to matter. They're not even connected to you. Now, imagine just coming up on a platform and someone is talking about someone. You've never had a negative experience with them, but you joined right on in, just going with the crowd. Isn't this fun? You could just keep piling on and piling on. And isn't this a great, jolly good time we're having here talking about whoever? you decide to talk about, they will try their hardest to lay on guilt and lies and spread it around, wanting you to defend yourself up against something you never even did or you don't even know about. Although they run around and tell other people, spinning these tales, trying to perpetrate as if they've been victimized, when in fact they are the aggressors, they are the perpetrators. And going back to what the brother-in-law stated, he's coming up and calling him an FAG and gay. What are you talking about? You are coming up here calling me FAG and gay, and I'm supposed to somehow feel guilty and responsible? And I'm supposed to do what? Let you do that? I guess this is what the brother-in-law expected. This is what these subjects around here in these YouTube streets expect you to adopt, what they created, that places them in the position of a pseudo victim. And if they can succeed in making you feel guilty about anything, especially if you ever decide to say anything in response, then here comes the ghost cavalry, acting as if you violated their rights, when in fact, we go back to the brother-in-law. They're the ones running around with this misgendering and claiming these men who don't have any issues with them, don't want to get into non-beefs. They'll just start piling on with this misgendering and this gay stuff. Like the brother-in-law said, get some new material. There is no new material. These are pre-YouTube behaviors. You mean to tell me these subjects that engage in this behavior just started doing it on YouTube? You mean to tell me these issues that they keep bringing up, how they're attacking people, how they're targeting people who never said anything to them or about them, or they're conjuring up a circumstance that they're floating to other people, but they're not coming to you about it? You really think this is happening first and only for these subjects on YouTube? If you recognize this is pre-YouTube behaviors, you let yourself off the hook. You don't have any responsibility for this behavior. This is a perfect example of what goes down in and around the Umar Johnson sector, and see no point or purpose to jump up and snap rotten bait to participate in a process of beefing that is based on nothing, or based on lies, or based on the fact that others are desperate for content. Interesting how they can't go to their own chat and say, let's get some content going. No, they've got to get content going based on floating these fictional episodes. And they want us to come back and say, no, this is actually what happened. No, that is what happened. Let me tell you this. Is that the only way they can get content? Is to conjure up lies and wait for others to come and defend themselves? Now, there are circumstances when people decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to say something. But what they want is to get you completely embroiled in a nonsensical, irrelevant beef that is non-existent. They just want you to trade barbs with them. They want you to call names. They want you to respond to them misgendering you. Again, people, these origins are pre-YouTube, and you best believe, looking on the screen, they're resulting from these outcomes. Those who are responsible for getting these feelings generated in these subjects, they're not going to those subjects, whether they're around or not. They're deciding to come onto YouTube and just display it here towards targets who had nothing to do with how they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they do. So the goal is to avoid getting caught up in circumstances that you didn't create and you're not responsible for. That's why it doesn't faze so many of us. They have to keep coming up with lies and coming up with lies. And now we're getting to the point where people are starting to get closer to the line of harassing people and threatening people for using YouTube rules to protect their content that they get paid for, just like YouTube's advertisers. Those advertisers have something to say about content. That's why YouTube completely overhauled. Remember several years ago, completely overhauled how you would earn money on YouTube because these advertisers didn't like a lot of the garbage that was being said. So the same thing applies to people who create content on YouTube. It's their original works, and you want to use it to gay bash heterosexual men, to misgender men. Every single dude you got a problem with is gay or a woman, or you put a wig on and you use their content to do it. Rev G is not the only one that has been targeted like this. This is the original strategy of the Umar Johnson sector. Again, we are not part of the Umar Johnson sector. We are first. You can't tell us we're part of something just because we went to a space to check it out. Then we ended up seeing you're just like Umar Johnson. You don't own us. We're not your slaves. Just because we went to someone's space several times, what does that mean? That we're forever required to go back and sit among you where you treat each other like shit. We don't treat each other like shit. We are not forced to go back and hang out with people who came for our very existence and threatened us and talked about health conditions or mental health conditions or deceased relatives, deceased children, getting a person in a position to think that she's got to bring a death certificate because of a demon is demanding it. These are the subjects that you want to be around. They've talked about you like dogs. They said they're going to, in vulgar terms, have sex with your wife from the back. Talk about your wife is a drug addict and your kids are this, and I'm going to throw your kids out the window. These are the subjects that they're forced to go back and deal with each other. We have options. We do not have to go and engage with those who are in chats and they say, oh yes, we're welcoming you everybody here. And then they start talking about people we care about. It really expects us to sit there and listen and say nothing. Again, the option is to just leave or confront the issue. And when you confront the issue, oh no, we can't have that. You cannot confront an issue when we're talking shit about you or people that you rock with, and we're getting the whole entire live stream to go against the person, and the host is leading the charge. No, you cannot force us to participate in that bullshit. And we're calling it out for what it is. You want to use extortion methods to get money, you're going to do it without us participating. Go ahead and use your extortion, but you cannot tell us we have to participate. You are the ones lowering yourselves to hanging around people you can't even stand, who are stabbing you in the back and telling your personal business. We don't have to resort to those methods, and we will not. We don't give a damn what you say about us. You can't force us to give you responses to anything. This is not a slave plantation for us. It's a slave plantation for those who hang around folks who dog them out time and time again, and you run back, and now you're wondering about who we're dealing with. It's none of your damn business who we're talking to, when we're talking to them. You have a right to get our phone bill and go through it and tell us who we're talking to, when and how. Produce your phone bills and tell us who you're talking to. We have a right to do what we're going to do, which means protect our own content. And if that means going to YouTube to report because it's being misused, we have a right to do that. And someone thinking they can threaten us with using illegal methods to protect our own interest or ourselves, listen, it's not going to turn out well for anyone who thinks they can intimidate us out of accessing our rights. You know, I have much more to say about this and other things. In the meantime, you know the drill. Buyer beware.